So I'm keen to be able to take people through what are the foundations for some of the big costs that people see within user acquisition. We've heard already that there are lots of different channels that people can use. We know that discoverability is a challenge. So I'll take you through some of the key sources that we've seen as being useful and some of the costs that are associated with them. To give you some bit of a background, I'm from Fiksu. We are a cohesive app promotion platform. We have run 2,400 different ad campaigns for over 800 clients, and we're proud to say that 40 of the top 50 grossing titles in last year for 2013 were worked on with us. So that's who we are. If I take you through this slide, one that many people have seen already, there are very many apps available. It's hard to be found. So what are the choices that you have when being discovered, when acquiring new users? We know that apps in themselves, we talked a little bit in some of the previous presentations about that movement from sort of console onto mobile, or Facebook onto mobile. Apps are going to continue to be one of the most important platforms for delivering content. We think it's going to be very, very large indeed. And if we take it, why is that? It's because people use their mobile devices very frequently. They touch the things 150 times a day. But part of the challenge with all of this is that actually people don't necessarily engage with many of their apps that they have on their device particularly frequently. The average user has got 40 apps, but will only regularly use 15. There are just over 20% of all app downloads are only ever used once. So the challenge is real, the challenge is there. How do you find users, how do you get them, and how do you get them engaged at a price that you can afford? I'll take you through what some of those prices are from what we've seen. We publish indexes based upon the average costs per installation that we see from all the different campaigns that we run. We've got very good visibility across many of these campaigns. So you can see that what this slide is showing you is that iOS is more mature than Android at the moment. Why is it more mature? It's because iOS is a fairly flat line. It's somewhere around about $1 to acquire a user on iOS. But with Android, it's been moving up and down a little bit. We think that's because some of the Android-only developer community and publishers are struggling to work out what's the right time to buy and what's not. That's shown there's not a big difference what we're seeing, particularly globally, between the cost to acquire someone in East Asia, in EMEA, or in North America. Although EMEA appears to be less expensive, interestingly, and also monetizes particularly well. Here we are in the East meets Hall. But by OS, you can see some of these differences playing out again. What I find most interesting about this particular trend is that we can see that people escaped Android when it came up to Christmas. It looks like those people that had a choice between spending money on Android or spending money on iOS were choosing to spend it at the Christmas period, at the busy holiday season, on iOS. That's why it is that the iOS peaks up in December, whereas Android goes down in comparison. But as Jean Masson had said before me, costs per installation are really a rather crude metric, and the industry needs to be able to find a way to move beyond that to actually understand what is the cost of acquiring a loyal user by whatever metric you would measure loyalty. In this instance, to be able to provide a consistent measure, we look at a loyal user as being a user who engages in an app 3 or more times and performs some form of loyalty event, whether that's a registration or a purchase or a share or that sort of thing. The good news about this is that this is an area which is actually starting to mature. We're starting to see the prices of acquiring loyal users reducing over time. I'll take you through in the next phase of this presentation some of the reasons why we think that's happening and some of the traffic sources that are driving that most effectively. The first is Facebook. Now, Facebook, everyone knows, is particularly good because they've got a very, very rich and very wide user base where they know a lot of the information about different people. So it means that you're able to target people much more effectively. It does mean, however, that the cost per click on Facebook is extraordinarily expensive. It's 10 times more expensive than a traditional banner or display ad network. But its performance is significantly better. So you can see here that the conversion rates are 11 times better. Purchasing rates are significantly higher. I mean, that 1.4 times improvement in purchasing rate is vast in terms of what that can actually do for producing an ROI for your game. And so as a consequence, it's actually 28% lower. It's a 28% reduction in cost per purchasing user on Facebook than we would see on traditional display networks. It's also better than video networks, marginally. They're a little bit closer. So start to think about those social networks as being areas where you may want to refocus a lot of your attention. I'm sure many people are doing that already. Another area to consider is down to incentivized and non-incentivized networks. Incentivized networks are always a controversial and contentious and a hot topic. And possibly rightly so, because they perform particularly well. So you know, in Fiksu we are network agnostic. We go to wherever the performance is. And we see a lot of our clients, the reason that actually there are some broad similarities between some of the things that I'm describing here and some of the things that JV had been describing in his presentation, is because both of us in our companies see app developers and app promoters and game developers making similar mistakes time and time again. We actually happen to think that incentivized networks work particularly well. If we look at the way that they deliver users of quality at a price, then actually they're particularly good. So I guess the message here is not to discount incentivized networks, but to consider them to be part of a portfolio of activity you undertake. To add more depth to that, if you actually compare the cost, if you compare the effectiveness of £10,000 spent on user acquisition, distributed between a traditional, non-incentivized network and an incentivized network, certainly you will have a smaller proportion of quality users obtained for that $10,000 that we're spending. Only 24% will be of high quality purchasing loyal users versus I think it's 57% on a non-incentivized network. But for the money that you're spending, you actually end up with significantly more loyal users and a much lower cost per loyal user. So that's another traffic area that I think that we should sort of take into account and something we wanted to highlight that should be part of everyone's portfolio to my mind. Why is it that people use these things? Well, of course, it's to be able to look at how does the acquisition of organic or natural users change depending upon the rank that you would have in an app store. We've done some correlation on this. We've chosen Flappy Bird, of course, because it's the title that everyone holds up as being the master of growth. And we can see that there is some sort of correlation between the number of downloads, the rank in the charts, and the extent to which Flappy Birds comes up in a search query. The thing to bear in mind from here, which isn't actually on this slide, but is demonstrated by it, is that, you know, I think it's something in the region of 88% of people, when they are browsing for apps, will only browse the top 25. They won't go beyond there. So below that, it's a bit of a challenge. The other way that people look for apps is by searching. And what I find particularly interesting about the chart behind me is that you can see that the search results change depending upon the App Store rank. If you type, because all this is measuring is what is the search position of the search query Flappy Bird, depending upon, how does that change over time depending upon the title's rank. So clearly, if you want to be found not just by browsing, but also by being searched, it's important to achieve a threshold level of rank in order to get your discoverability up. Incentivized networks, of course, are particularly good at helping that kind of activity. The point I'd like to leave all of you with is, for the trends that I've shown you in the past, you can see how there's some fluctuations in the costs per installation. You can see how the cost per loyal user is starting to come down as the overall app advertising market starts to mature. But the chart behind me shows the distribution of Fiksu's advertising spend, the spend that it has placed on behalf of its clients for advertising over time. I think the far left of the screen is showing the 2010, it's going right the way through to January of this year. You can see that that the distribution of our spend is very volatile. Because we're a network agnostic, we go where the performance is, these are the things that you will need to take into account. Everything I've shown you, all of the trends, they will continue to change. You need to keep on top of these in order to be able to make the right decisions in the future. And that's it. We have a wealth of information if you would like to pick up on that from our website, but I'd like to thank you for your time and great luck acquiring users. Thanks.